Kilauea not erupting, reversing warning. Scientists say Hawaii's second largest volcano is not erupting. March 11, 2023, 10 am. Indonesia's Merapi volcano spews hot clouds in new eruption. Indonesia's Mount Merapi has erupted with avalanches of shearing gas clouds and lava, forcing authorities to halt tourism and mining activities on the slopes of the country's most active volcano. Volcanic eruption, an eruption of molten rock, hot rock, fragments and hot gases through a volcano, which is a vent in a planet's or satellite's crust. Volcanic eruptions can cause disastrous loss of life and property. They range from relatively gentle eruptions, as typically seen in Hawaiian volcanoes, to massively destructive ones, such as the eruption of Vesuvius that destroyed Pompeii in 79 CE. Volcanic eruptions have captured the imagination of people for millennia and the future in several mythologies as well as works of fiction. This eruption also play a role in climate change, with expelled gases such as carbon dioxide contributing to global warming, while ash, dust and gases such as sulfur dioxide can drive global temperatures down. Volcanic eruption in Hawaii. Related topics: Kimberlite eruption, ejecta, Volcanian eruption, Strombolian eruption, Millennian eruption. How volcanoes erupt. Volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens. Volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens was the volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens and subsequent flooding caused by melted glaciers. Was the volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens and subsequent flooding caused by melted glaciers. See all videos for this article. Volcanic eruptions occur as a result of heat moving under Earth's surface. They often begin with an accumulation of gas-rich magma, molten underground rock, in reservoirs near Earth's surface. Though they may be preceded by emission of steam and gas from small vents in the ground. Small earthquakes which may be caused by a rising plug of dense viscous magma oscillating against a sheath of more permeable magma may also signal volcanic eruptions, especially explosive ones. St. Helens volcanic eruptions. In some causes, magma rises in conduits to the surfaces as they thin and fluid lava, either flowing out continuously or shooting straight up in glowing fountains or curtains. The eruption of Hawaii's volcanoes fall into this category. In other cases, entrapped gases turn the magma into sheets and hurl viscous clouds of lava into the air. In more violent eruption, the magma conduit is hollowed out by an explosive blast, and the solid fragments are ejected in a great cloud of ash-laden gas that rises tens of thousands of meters into the air. An example of this phenomenon is the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Many explosive eruptions are accompanied by a pyroclastic flow. A fluidized mixture of hot gas and incandescent particles that sweeps down a volcano's flanks, incinerating everything in its path. If the expelled ash or gases collect on a high snowfield or glacier, they may melt a large quantities of ice, and the result can be a disastrous flood or landslide that rushes down a volcano slope. eruption stopped travel in Europe. See all videos for this article. Volcanic eruption can also result in secondary damage beyond the direct loss to life and property. For the eruption itself, volcanic ash can cause respiratory illnesses such as silicosis and can be particularly harmful to infants and people with chronic lung disease. Gases such as hydrogen fluoride, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen fluoride can cause both short and long-term problems. Eruption can cause economic harm that affects workers, livelihoods, and can force mass migrations of people in affected regions. The 2010 eruption of Iceland's Vesuvius also demonstrated the threat posed to jet aircraft by high clouds of volcanic ash. This eruption led aviation authorities to ground flights across northern and central Europe for several days. Volcanoes can be classified by the manner in which they erupt. These 6 types of volcanic eruptions, starting with the least explosive, make up one classification system: Icelandic, Hawaiian, Strombolian, Volcanian, Pelian, and Pulinian. Its name corresponds to a region or to a specific volcano or historical eruption that exemplifies the type. Volcanic eruption on Volcanic eruptions are not limited to Earth. Jupiter's moon flow is subject to strong gravitational forces due to Jupiter's mass as well as interaction with Jupiter's other moons, Europa and Callisto. This forces causes distortion in loss, shape, and make it the most volcanically active body in the solar system. Mars is also known for several volcanoes, with Olympus Mons being the largest known volcano in the solar system. The volcanoes of Mars are shield volcanoes, which have a relatively flat profile as Mars' low gravity allows for longer and more widespread lava flows. According to some estimated, Olympus Mons has been built up by eruptions for more than a billion years, which has resulted in its 700 kilometer, like 435-mile diameter. Volcanic eruptions in culture. Volcanoes and volcanic eruptions features in several mythologies and cultural traditions, especially in regions with high volcanic activity. The word volcano is derived from the Latin volcanus, or Vulcan, the name of the ancient Roman god of fire. The Maori people of New Zealand are territorial, which lives on the Pacific Ring of Fire, having their traditions a god of volcanoes and earthquakes called Ruemoko. Pili is the Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes. In Norse mythology, Muspelheim is a watch, glowing land in the south, guarded by Sword the Fire Gate. Volcanic activity is a common feature in fiction too, in the inferior section of the Divine Comedy. (38 to 21). Dante describes hell as an inverted cone with the last and innermost circle a fiery lake, symbolic of a volcanic crater and a journey to the center of the earth. 1864. By Jules Verne, the protagonist commence their journey at the volcano in Iceland, and they return to the surface by way of an eruption at Stromboli in the Mediterranean. Verne also set his The Mysterious Iceland, 1874, on a volcanic island, and it ends with the Volcano Eruption, obliterating the island in J.R.R. Tolkien's is Lord of the Rings trilogy, 1954 to 55. The Dark Lord Sauron possesses the One Ring of Power in the fiery pits of the volcano Mount Doom, where Frodo and Sam go to destroy the ring. The journey to Mount Doom is the primary plot element in the series. 150, eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia, the largest volcanic eruption in recorded history, had a tremendous impact on the world's climate as well as its culture. Tambora expelled as much as 150 cubic kilometers, roughly 36 cubic miles of ash, pumice, and other rocks, and aerosols into the atmosphere. These materials blocked substantial amounts of sunlight from reaching Earth's surface, eventually reducing the average global temperature by as much as 3 degrees Celsius by 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The following year was called the year without a summer. It was during this plague period that Mary Shelley and her literary circle were confined indoors in Geneva when she conceived of her masterpieces Frankenstein 1818. Edward Munch's The Scream. When Krakatoa, also in Indonesia, erupted in 1883, the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch out on a walk saw the skytrain glided halfway across the world and later was inspired to paint The Scream in 1893. Films have also included their fair share of volcanic eruptions as crucial points, from the eruption that ends the terrible conflict in 1 billion years before Christ 1966 to the trigger to erupt volcanic base of Plain profiled in the James Bond film You Only Live Twice 1967 to the very obviously named Volcano 1997 in West Tommy Lee Jones and Annie Hill's fight of lava from an erupting volcano in Los Angeles. Famous eruptions in stories such as those of Vesuvius and Mount St. Helens have featured in numerous films and TV programs. need a brief summary of these topics. Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji, Japanese Fuji-san, also split. Fuji-san, also called Fujiyama or Fujinoyama, highest mountain in Japan. It rises to 12,388 feet, like 3,776 meters, near the Pacific Ocean coast in Yamanashi and Shizuoka in prefectures of central Honshu, about 60 miles, like 100 kilometers west of the Tokyo Yokohama metropolitan area. It is a volcano that has been dormant since its last eruption in 1707, but is still generally classified as active by geologists. The mountain is the major feature of Fuji-Hakone Aizachou National Park. 1936, and it is at the center of a UNESCO World Heritage Site designated in 2030. Cultural significance. Mount Fuji, the rising of the mountain's name in uncertain, it first appears as Fujinoyama in Hitachi Nonkoni Furuki 1737. An early Oriental record. Among the several theories about the source of the name is that it is derived from an Ainu term meaning fire, coupled with sen, the Japanese word for mountain. The Chinese ideograms kanji now used to write Fuji cannot more of a sense of good fortune or well-being. In the present day, the Japans typically refer to the mountain as Fuji-san, whereas foreign visitors tend to refer to the mountain somewhat incorrectly as Mount Fujiyama, which translated to Mount Fuji, mountain in the Japanese language. Hokusai. Under the wave of Kanagawa, Mount Fuji with the graceful conical form has become famous throughout the world and is considered the sacred symbol of Japan. Now, in Japanese, there is a sense of personal identification with the mountain, and each summer, thousands of Japanese climb to the shrine on its peak. Its image has been reproduced countless times in Japanese art, perhaps no more famously than in the series of woodblock prints. 36 views of Mount Fuji by Hokusai, which were originally published between 1826 and 1833. Origin: Mount Fuji, Japan, Japan's central Honshu. According to tradition, the volcano was formed in 286 BCE by an earthquake. The truth is somewhat more complex. The age of Fuji is disputed, but it seems to have formed during the past 2.6 million years on a base dating from up to 65 million years ago. The first eruption and the first peaks probably occurred sometime after 7 lakh years ago. The earliest precursors of Mount Fuji were Pompeii, which formed the mountain's north slope, and Ashitaka Yama, which sides southwest of an mountain. Mount Fuji is a stratovolcano that rose sometime after 4 lakh years ago between the peaks of Pompeii and Ashitaka. The present-day mountain is a composite of 3 successive volcanoes. At the bottom is Pompeii, which was surrounded by Old Fuji about 1 lakh years ago, and finally by the most recent Shin Fuji, New Fuji over the millennia. The lava and other eject from Fuji covered by most of Pompeii. Although the top of the latter cone continued to protrude from the slope of Fuji, Shin Fuji probably first became active about 10,000 years ago and has continued ever since to smolder or erupt occasionally. In the process, it has filled the slopes of its predecessors and added the sandstone, producing the mountains now nearly perfect tapered form. Blue Ridge Mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway, one in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, United States. Appalachian Highlands rise and valley. The Appalachian mountain system, Britannica quest, or about mountains quiz, Mount Fuji. The base of the volcano is about 78 miles, about 125 kilometers in circumference, and has a diameter of some 25 to 30 miles, 40 to 50 kilometers. At the summit of Mount Fuji, the crater spans about 1,600 feet, about 500 meters in surface diameter, and sink to a depth of about 820 feet, like 250 meters. Around the jagged edges of the crater are 8 peaks: Oshidek, Izudeki, Jojudeki, Komagetak, Mushimetak, Kengamine, Okusandeka, and Kusuhidek. Mount Fuji is a part of the Fuji volcanic zone, a volcanic chain that extends northward from the Mariana Island and the Izua's Land through the Ezo Peninsula to northern Honshu. Geologists note that the subduction of the Pacific plate beneath the Philippine plate at the Nankai through which extends along Japan's southern coast. Like it drives Mount Fuji, volcanic activity, large eruptions occur about every 500 years. Accounts of the most recent major eruption in December 1707 note that ash darkened the mid-sky as far as Edo, present-day Tokyo, and white temples and dwellings near the mountains Geologists report that the eruption was triggered by a magnitude 8.4 earthquake, which struck the region for 49 days earlier. Mount Fuji volcanic activity since 1707 has been limited mostly to small earthquakes. However, a magnitude 6.4 aftershock struck the mountain's southern flank in the days following the Great Sendai earthquake of 2011.
you.